Hey everyone, welcome back to the Creator Cafe. We're actually on the 14th episode. Just pretty cool. You may have noticed like last week there was an episode, but we'll get into that in today's episode as well. But I just really wanted to take time today to share, some of the lessons I've learned, over the last few months in terms of basically me over promising but under delivering. And I feel like it's something that I'm continuously working on. And I also wanted to share with any other creators listening that, to avoid, falling into the same pitfalls that I have. Yeah, just diving straight into that. So, first of all, you may notice I don't have the new microphone that I promised in the incoming improvement episode a couple weeks back. And something just came up, and that I wasn't able to get it at the meetup that next day. So yeah, I don't have it yet. I'm going to get it eventually, but it's just not here yet. Another thing, back when in the intro just now, I mentioned, there wasn't an episode last week, and that kind of broke my 13-week streak of, putting out an episode every single week. And anyways, I was actually recording an episode last week during Halloween to release, so I can keep up the streak. And then what I realized, I was thinking like, because I was just going to record like a little shorter, little discussion. And I realized, hey, I want to focus, on the quality instead of the quantity, just of maintaining that streak. I really wanted to put out the best content that I can instead of, just rushing something really quick just so I can have a video out. And that's what I told myself, and that's what I stuck to for that day, which is why there wasn't one last week. But then recently, this week, I was thinking again, like, wait a minute, was it really that I wanted to do quality over quantity? Because, I always put in, make sure that I give, the best quality that I can at the moment, for these episodes. But then I was thinking, like, wait a minute, is it really that I want to focus on the quality over quantity, or was it more that I was scared of living up to the promises that I made of, making sure I get out, or the expectations that I even put on myself of like, this is what the audience expects, and it has to meet this threshold or else it's not good enough, I guess. I feel like a lot of creators in general feel that at some point in their, creative career or just projects in general. Just the notion of like, we got to keep improving our content, to keep growing and building. And then something just, it kind of gets to a point where, it could cripple a creator because they eventually feel like, oh, none of this content is going to be good enough to post. And so I think that's what I was kind of starting to dive into, that whole notion of it has to be perfect. And hey, but I took a step back and I'm like, wait, so now that I realized what was the real reason why there was no episode last week, then that's when I really buckled down and I was like, okay, that can't be the case. I can't let that happen to me. I can't dive down that hole, which is why we're recording this now. I am using Zoom, even though I'm not talking to anybody else, and I have my, my phone as my microphone again. But anyways, I feel like I can be at least as raw as possible, through Zoom, which is why I don't have like my camera set up, in my room and recording. I feel like, using Zoom, I can, because I usually just go one take on this and I don't have like multiple takes of, as like what I do when I have my camera set up on the tripod, and then I usually have multiple takes of those. But here I think I can be most authentic as possible to really get this point across, that it doesn't really have to be perfect to put out a certain piece of content or a certain project that you made or like a piece of art. I think this is also why, I don't post on Instagram that much as I should, or any platform in general. Anyways, going back to overpromising but underdelivering. So I feel that it's important to make sure that we're instead doing the opposite, where we are underpromising but over-delivering. And that's, I think, it comes down to, probably, I see why people say to, keep quiet on your goals and just work on them instead of, just telling a bunch of people like what you're going to do, just do them, So basically, I think putting more action at the forefront instead of the words of like, oh, I'm going to do this, but rather just make it happen. I think that's something that I need to work on as well, which I've, been working on for the past few months now, or even longer than that, actually. Of any creator, I guess, more say just takes action instead of, telling people like, oh, I'm going to do this, this, and this, but instead just go ahead and start them. Then I think that will help limit, the notion of, oh, I overpromised, too much and all these big things, and then now I can't deliver on them. Because scenarios happen and change, like situations, unexpected ones, will come up. And like, like the whole pandemic, that was, nobody expected that. Of course, that affected a variety of different projects, like the, for movies, movie recordings, even just businesses in general that are opening up, new businesses that we're going to launch, things like that. Even maybe even releasing certain, books or artwork or animations, things like that. I'm sure that delayed, quite a bit of projects that people were planning to release, and especially some people that wanted to promise something really big for everyone listening and tuning in to what they had to offer. But anyways, I think also, aside from that, it comes down to also not judging yourself, or at least like for me, myself, when you don't meet a certain expectation or a certain goal that was formally set out. And that's something I've been working on, for quite a while now, just because, I missed a certain date to or deadline to fulfill something doesn't mean that I should start, getting down on myself that like, oh, why didn't that happen? Going down that sort of rabbit hole. Instead, more say, it's like, okay, I missed it, but now how can I keep going? How can I set a new deadline and like, or not even, or just get it done? How can I fix it, basically? And I think that just that adaptability regardless of circumstance, I think that would be very valuable for like any creator to have. Also just expectations of like yourself, but also even if you don't meet the expectations of like the audience, like, I mean, you guys, like everyone listening and watching right now, Creator Cafe, I'm sure like I've promised a lot of things coming. I think yeah, in another video, not a Creator Cafe episode, but more like a pixel art one, I said that I wanted to, make a pixel art short film for October for like the Halloween season. And yeah, that didn't happen, right? But I had said that I was going to do it. I mean, I still want to do it, I still want to make a pixel art short film, but it's going to take longer, than what I initially expected. So I think the main takeaways are first, just maybe not even tell a bunch of people your goals, but just take action yourself and do them. Maybe you can give like general ideas and general plans, but not so much setting a specific deadline, because when it comes down to when it draws closer to that deadline and maybe you haven't gotten as far in that project as you would have wanted to, a creator can start to get more anxious. It gets stressful because it's like, oh wait, I don't think I'm going to meet the deadline, but I promised the people this and this and this. But I think just setting that initial expectation of, hey guys, I'm working on this and I don't really have a set release date or a deadline for it, but just know that I'm working on it and that it will eventually, release. And I think that takes a burden off of not having so much, stress build up when it draws closer to that deadline. But at the same time, I should probably clarify, that it's important to set a deadline for yourself to make sure that you hit that goal. Because, for instance, if I just gave myself an unlimited deadline, to launch Dalem Tech, and that means, technically it can launch in like 15 years, like it can take a while if you don't have that more of a personal deadline to keep to motivate you, to drive you forward. That's why I think that having deadlines is important, and just definitely having an expectation of this is how I want to approach this situation and how this is how I'm going to do it. Okay, I think to sum it all up, I think what it comes down to, is setting personal deadlines for yourself and telling yourself, okay, this is when I want to have this done, this project done. And you won't start stressing out over, oh, I promised the community this, 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 and this, but it's only like 10% done, like I feel like setting deadlines for yourself is important, but I think it's important to be careful, of giving other people this deadline and this promise that, like, oh, this is going to happen. But because on the chance that it doesn't, for whatever reason, any situation arises, then the creator wouldn't have that whole stress and anxiety over, oh, I gotta please the audience community, whatever it may be. I feel like that will not be as impactful on the creator as would a personal deadline would be. I mean, it still would, because you want to be able to reach these goals, and not just have an unlimited timeline, where it's like, I'll do it tomorrow, because I have. But I think it's still important to set a deadline so you're still going on top of it, working hard at it. And that's what I've, been striving to do, is setting deadlines for myself. But I've been trying not to, tell so many people about, oh, this is what I want to have done, by this date. Yeah, that's pretty much sums up, what I wanted to talk about, just this idea, that I'm working on under-promising but over-delivering, because I want to bring, as much, I guess, value and as much, I just want to impact, on a greater scale as much as I can. And I feel like if I can be big talk too. I can say like, oh, I'm gonna do this, 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 and this. But then I think that I really need to start matching my actions to my words. And part of that, comes from making sure that I don't overpromise and underdeliver. But yeah, thanks for tuning into today's episode. It's a little bit shorter than usual. We'll have a guest next week, another photographer, and then I'm working on emailing, some other guests as well, potential guests, and seeing what they have to say in that regard. Please let me know if you have any guests that you want to see, any creators that inspire you or that you want to hear from. Open to if you leave a comment or if you DM me on Instagram. Either way, thanks for tuning in once again, and see you guys on the next episode.